have the privilege of having with me in studio today the one person that I can think of, and I know a lot of people in personal finance who, if they said, I think you should do this, I would do it. Without question, I have with me the best-selling author of the What Would the Rockefellers Do Killing Sacred Cows, Now Money Unmasked. He's absolutely brilliant when it comes to everything personal finance. If you desire to create wealth, it's a pleasure to have in studio with me none other than my friend Garrett Gunderson. Garrett, glad to have you here today, brother. It is such a pleasure, yeah. Our last conversation was my favorite conversation that I've ever had around money and wealth. The way that the space that you create, the way that you listen, the additional things that you say, and even listening to you this morning. You were teaching something that I was writing about yesterday that I was blown away because you were teaching straight from the Bible, and I was just like, oh, I'm so glad I'm here. I'm so glad I'm hearing this right now. Wow. So cool, yeah. Like the interesting thing, and we were talking about this morning, the interesting thing about principles is they are immutable. They've always been what they will always be, and they've always been that way. And so when two different people from two totally different parts of the world discover something around the same topic, that's truth. Oh, it's going to be the same truth. In finance, we've yet to find something we disagree on. It 100%. I concur, I literally concur. So it's interesting. I don't know if you know I tell people this or not. Maybe I shouldn't even say this, and maybe you're going to tell me don't do that again. Hopefully not. Okay, anyway, we'll find out, yeah. So, like when I have people that I'm coaching who are in the financial services space, and they say how do I get more clients? How do you get more customers? I said, model Garrett Gunderson, write financial books that teach financial literacy. Make them your client first before you introduce them to your insurance company, which is your vendor. So I tell them to model you, and I don't know if I stated that accurately, and if you don't want me to tell people that anymore, I won't keep telling them. Okay, here's what happens here's what happens. I don't have any idea what he's about to say right now. Financial professionals can license my content, so if we align philosophically and share the same values, then I'll write a foreword. They can write a foreword for my Rockefeller's book. And then every link inside of the book points to their website with our tests that actually schedule the appointments for them. And every article I've ever written, they can put their name on. Take my name off because in the world of abundance, you want to serve people. I don't necessarily need the credit, but I do like the cash, so I'll take the cash. I love that. I don't want the credit, but I'll take the cash. It's really interesting. So you said something. You said in the world of abundance. That's 5 very, very powerful words. In the world of abundance. One of the problems if you're struggling financially right now, one of the problems that you're having is that you believe in infinite scarcity, and when you believe that scarcity must be overcome, but the reality is scarcity could not exist without abundance, but abundance can exist without scarcity. And I believe in the principle of infinite abundance. And here's how I state the principle of infinite abundance. There's more than enough for everybody to have more than enough. And there'd still be more than enough left over. Stop thinking that you're in competition with other people for a limited amount of resources, because there's not a limited amount of resources. In fact, there's an X. You are the God is the source. You are the resource. The stuff that you think is a resource is nothing more than an asset. It might be a depreciating asset. It might be an appreciating asset. It might be a self-replenishing asset. But it's just an asset. So stop buying into the lie that things that are valuable are scarce. Is one of the things that causes people not to find things that are abundant, that are right in front of them. Would you agree with that 100%? The first book that I ever wrote, in the first chapter in that book, is called The Finite Pie, which is the myth. It is a myth, and people think if one person takes too big of a slice, there's less pie for someone else. Not understanding if we went back in time, come on, and we could see King Louis XIV. He's living in the palace of Versailles. And there's people today that are middle class, that live a richer life than him because we have plumbing for one. There you go, and refrigeration indoor, yeah. Plumbing is a variety of food. Air conditioning, yeah, air conditioning. That was we're on the same wavelength here. I mean, and yet, and if you wanted music back then, you had to hire a quartet, right? Anyone could just grab it like this, so we continue to have more wealth, not less. And there was a philosopher, Thomas Malthus, who believed in scarcity and said that we would run out of food. At first, I was like, has he never heard of reproduction? Like animals reproduce, right? Plants grow again, right? And so he had a belief 400 years ago that we would run out of food at a much smaller population than we have today, because he believed that resources were something that couldn't be replenished, and that once someone had something, it was something the other person couldn't. It was only win-lose. And that belief is nefarious because it has people believe that money has intrinsic value instead of people. So good, and the thing is, people are the ones that have intrinsic value. Money is just a byproduct or a receipt for the value that's created so that we could store that energy and use it again. Because if I do something for someone that I don't know and they're like, how can I repay you? Well, if we were in the bartering times, that would be very complicated because they'd have to, if they didn't have what I wanted, they'd have to find someone else, and it could be this very tedious, long type of transaction, but they could simply say, I will give you this money. And I say, great, I'll take that money because now I can store that energy and I could tap into using someone else's energy. And in finance, unfortunately, people are being taught way to wealth is to store more money, not deploy it. It's so insane. That's so insane. It's so interesting. So you were talking about this limited pie thing, and so one of principles that I share with people, I didn't say it the exact same way, but I said the exact same thing that you said, and that is like the economy is not a pie. And the reason we know the economy is not a pie is because God's ideal environment for man is not a bakery. God didn't put Adam and Eve in a bakery. He put them in a garden, and you may say, well, what's the difference between a bakery and a garden? In a bakery, consumption creates lack, but in a garden, consumption creates the potential for reproduction. If I eat an apple, it exposes the seed. If I plant the seed, it doesn't grow an apple, it grows a tree. And so that's why we don't run out of food, because we live in a world where God created an expanding and self-replenishing universe that reproduces more than we can consume. That's why a garden is God's ideal environment for man, not a bakery, and there's no such thing as an economic pie. I love that, and I just wonder if financial people never read about the parable of the talents. Many of them have not, I'm sure, right, because the person that buries them is the slothful servant, and yet most people are taught set it and forget it, right? Does that make any sense? Save, sacrifice, defer, delay while that money rots because it's losing value because it's not deployed. Yes, and it's losing value and you're losing time while that money's not deployed. You're losing the time that you could be using that money to create more wealth. Like if in my Trash Man to Cash Man book I said it like this, like the primary purpose of money in the mind of a wealthy person is to turn it into more money. I like to hold on to my money long enough for it to get pregnant and have some babies. I want to have a money maternity ward, so it's just giving birth, give I don't ever, and then I said this because I think I'm funny. I don't ever spend the mama money. I only spend the baby money, so yeah, I agree with, and you also talked about people think that accumulating like store set it and forget it. It's always a mistake to think of money as a tool to be viewed versus a tool to be used. It works so much better. It's like have you ever been to Israel? Because when you go to you have been to Israel. If you go to Israel, it's amazing because at the north of Israel you have the Sea of Galilee. Then you have the River Jordan that flows all the way down to the south, and it flows into the Dead Sea. Right? And the Dead Sea is interesting because fish can't live in the River Jordan, fish can live in the Sea of Galilee, but fish can't live in the Dead Sea. Now, why can't fish live in the Dead Sea? Well, that's right. It's salt sea, but it's a heavy mineral deposit. But here's the reason. Because the difference between the Dead Sea and the Sea of Galilee, the Sea of Galilee has inlets and outlets. The Sea of the Dead Sea only has an inlet, it has no outlets. And when your money doesn't have an outlet, it becomes stagnant and nothing can live in there and nothing can reproduce. So let's break this down in financial terms, because there's a balance sheet. A balance sheet is simply your assets versus your liabilities. That's your balance sheet. Okay, and most people are taught that net worth is this big indicator of wealth. But here's the thing, nobody knows what your net worth is, and you can't buy anything with it. Yet so many people try to protect it at the expense of building the one that matters, which is your human life value, not your property value. So if you invest in yourself first to grow, the exponential skill sets allow you to solve problems, and add value, you'll actually grow that balance sheet exponentially greater. But if you only look at the balance sheet, that's like the Dead Sea. You have to look at the income statement. That's your income versus your expenses. And if you're in a mindset of I've got to just scrimp and save, you start to minimize expenses. But there's more than one type of expense, and the expense most people miss is a productive expense. There are no budgets for productive expenses. A billionaire isn't going to say, "What's our budget for this?" They're going to say in the command center, "What allows us to grow this? And while it's growing, let's keep going with it." And a budgeter would say, "Well, I've got to cut back. I've got to reduce." And no one shrinks their way to wealth. So even if someone never has, no, and even if someone were to have millions of dollars in their bank account, if they got there through the habit of sacrifice, they don't flip a switch one day and say, "Now I'm abundant. I'm finally going to enjoy my money." They continue to think, "What if I outlive it? What if the market doesn't perform? What if interest rates change? What happens with taxes?" Because they're not in control of the outcome of their income. They're not in control of the outcome of their income. Say that. We are indoctrinated to accumulate while institutions accelerate. Accumulation is, and they accelerate with our money. Exactly. So when they say it takes money to make money, it doesn't take their money to make money. It takes your money for them to make money. When they say high risk equals high return, you take the risk, they get the return. We'd have a revolution overnight if people had to write the check for the expenses that come out of their funds rather than just have it automatically taken out without their knowing, because people go, "Wait, you mean I lost money and I'm still sending you a check?" Why, right, but we've lost accountability, because if we get stuck in net worth mindset, we neglect the accountability of cash flow. An income statement is about cash flow, and the way that we look at it is, how can we get our assets to create income so that our money is having babies while we're sleeping, right? But where people get really confused is they think, I've got to minimize my liability so I have less expenses. But guess what? That's not true with a productive expense. The productive expense that most people don't take the leap towards is investing in themselves, because they go, "What if I'm not good enough? What if it doesn't work out? Well, I could just have that money show up in the bank account." And all of the indoctrination is retirement plans. Just fund that, and then one day, someday, when you're too old to enjoy it, you can finally enjoy it. But you don't enjoy life along the way. And if you don't enjoy life along the way, you cannot be wealthy. Well, because wealth is about one thing, your ability to be present. And when you're present, you can connect, you can create, you can listen to God, you can do all the things that matter. But in finance, they're saying if you'll just do the things that you hate now, you'll be able to live a life that you love one day. But one day and someday never comes. It never comes. And so this accumulation doctrine says, hey, wealth is a function of how much money can you set aside. And when they tell you it takes money to make money, I want you to realize it doesn't take money to make money. It takes relationships and ideas. It takes value and exchange. Then they tell you high risk equals high return. But you actually get returns by learning how to mitigate risk through knowledge and skill. And then they tell you in it for the long haul, but you don't have to wait for the long haul if you become financially independent. Which is, how do I get my assets to create income? How do I make sure that my liabilities are as productive as possible? Because you don't get assets without liabilities. Oh, that's so good. You don't get assets without liabilities. You don't get a home without property tax, right? Because the law of polarity makes it so. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. For every negative, there's a positive. Every positive, there's a negative, so you have to be aware of that. So if you know that, you can literally make adjustments to what you're doing for what you just said. Well, and this is where I think that you are the ultimate philosopher, is you turn expenses into profit centers. Profit centers, that's one of my main mottos. Like if I can't turn this expansion into a profit center, maybe I shouldn't have this expense. Because you can turn any expense into a profit center. This building that I bought 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I paid $625,000 for this building, but I record my YouTube videos here now. My 2 YouTube channels pay me between $50 and $75,000 a month. This mortgage on this building is $6,000 a month. So tax write-offs appreciation and the building pays for itself. It's an expense that pays. I just bought 2 4 or $2, $5 million house. Put another $500,000 in it. I won't mention the size of the mortgage, but it's large. But one of the things I did in that house is I bought a golf simulator. The golf simulator, for before I could put the golf simulator in, had to have a contractor come knock out one of the back walls to make the room big enough to put the simulator in. So just getting the room ready was about $10,000, and then the golf simulator was $128,000. Like, well, how's that go? How you going to turn that expense into a profit center? Easy. I'm literally in the process of starting a golf channel, a golf YouTube channel, which will eventually pay for that entire house. Well, and here's the thing. If someone has a high W-2 income, they might be paying 37%, federal income tax. But let's break down what Myron's doing here. He's got this building. You can cost segregate it for depreciation, which accelerates the depreciation, which would offset other income. It will appreciate in value, which you don't pay tax on the appreciation other than property tax. There's no income tax because it's a capital gain asset. If he chose to sell this, if down the road he said, "Hey Garrett, I'm looking to sell this building," I can say you're one of the more charitable guys I know. So what if instead of you just selling it outright, we donated it to your favorite charity? Is there a church that you would love to donate this to? And he says, yes. I'm like, okay, we're going to donate it to the church. You're then going to sell the property. It's going to fund a trust, but it's a charitable remainder trust, so you're the first beneficiary. The church is the second beneficiary, so you pay 0 tax on that sale. You actually get a partial tax deduction you can take in that year and up to 5 years afterwards against a certain percentage of your income. And then what happens is you get a lifetime income off of the trust that you can invest. And when you die, you just have to leave around 10% to the charity or more depending on how you want to do it and how much tax advantage you want. But essentially, we could boost your cash flow 30% upon the sale by using a charitable trust. And because you already have life insurance, insurance will replenish tax-free to your family. The building or the funds in the trust will go to the church, and you will have spent 30% more than if you would have sold it outright while you got the write-off. I would have spent 30% more or made 30%. You would have been able to enjoy 30% more cash flow because less tax and the full amount of work for you. This is why Garrett is my financial dude. Y'all get it? Okay, now y'all picking up what I'm putting down. So like stuff like that. Now I'm relatively savvy financially. I mean, I ain't no dummy now. But I didn't know that, right? And then the issue is a lot of people don't. And if you're not in a place where you're like, well, I don't really have a way to do that, the seed has now been planted, the apple has been eaten, the seed is there. So now you can say that's a possibility because I'll have people come to me, hey, I just got a letter of intent to sell my business. I'm like, Wish you would have got with me before because we could have done certain things. Like right now, I have clients that are going, hey, we're starting a new business. I'm like, great, I want you to consider a C corporation, which most people go double taxation. It's more expensive. Well, the rule is there's a thing called Section 1202 that if you own that business for at least 3 years, you can sell it for up to 15 million tax-free. In 3 years, you can sell it for half of that. Within 5 years, the full 15 million tax-free per partner. We know Myron has family members, so those all count. We can also set up a trust for you. That would be another partner because you don't own that. The trust does, but then when the trust is funded, you could benefit from proceeds of the trust. So I just had a client that sold $70 million tax-free because they set up the C corporation. Now most people are thinking about tax strategy as a like, hey, can I write off my home office? Can I rent out my home for 14 days for the Augusta rule? Like those things are helpful, but the bigger picture things come from coordination, and the big difference I saw by studying wealthy people. When I was really young, I was in a coal mining town. My great-grandfather was a coal miner, both my grandfathers and my dad, and their belief was money was something you had to hold on to because you didn't know if the mine was going to go on strike, and you didn't know when the next dollar was going to come. And my great-grandfather was separated from his wife because he couldn't put food on the table in southern Italy, so he came to America while she was pregnant and didn't meet his daughter till she was a couple years old. So that impacts you at a cellular level, like it's a folklore that gets handed down for generations, like you got to hold on to what you got. But that's a form of scarcity, and there's no greater destroyer of wealth than scarcity. 100% no luck. Go ahead. That I get excited because it reminds me of something. Of course but it reminds me of the biblical principle that the very first temptation in the history of the world was the temptation to focus on lack. So Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden, and God says to them, of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat. So every and freely, are those lack words or abundance words? Those are abundance words. And then but God said, but of the tree that's in the midst of the garden, thou shalt not eat of it. For the day thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. So the tree, how many is the one? So they had everything for free except one thing. And then it says in Genesis chapter 3, now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said unto the woman, yea, hath God said, ye shall not eat of every. So he added the word not and took out the word freely. Does that change the meaning? Absolutely. And the woman said, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. She took out the word every and the word freely, which God said, of every tree freely. She said, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of garden. That's not what God said. He said, of every tree, eat for free. Okay, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the tree that's in the midst of the garden, God has said, you shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. Well, God never said, don't touch it, but she made the same mistake that humans make today. She thought her willpower was going to help her not eat the fruit. Satan, the serpent, knew that he didn't have to get her to touch it in order to eat it. All he had to do was get her to pay attention to it in the first place. And he said, you shall not surely die. For God doth know that the day you eat thereof, then your eyes will be open, and you shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. And then he says this, and when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, so what happened? Paying attention, focusing on the lack. The only thing she lacked was that one tree, but she started focusing on the lack. She lost sight of all of her abundance. And it says that that tree of knowledge of good and evil that they weren't supposed to eat, the only thing they lacked was in the middle of the garden, which means in order to even get to it, she had to walk past and ignore all of the abundance she had just to get to the things she lacked. It literally, you are 100% right. Nothing perpetuates lack like scarcity, and financial planning promulgates scarcity. It says save 10% of your income through budgeting, through reduction. Wait for 30 years before you enjoy it, and if you didn't start early enough, shame on you, right? So it's coming from guilt and shame, and then what it has to do is go like, hey, I feel behind. So people do one of two things. They tighten down even more, creating more constraint, frustration, which is very difficult in a marriage. They start blaming the partner for spending too much money and vilifying them. And a lot of the spending is coming from a reaction to this notion of scarcity, or they just start working so hard that they're distant. And here hard work with the wrong philosophy still leads to lack. Hard work is part of the problem because people are working in the wrong things. They're trading time for money instead of using their time to build skill. So good, and it's because they don't want to spend that money on themselves because they're taught they have to put that money in a retirement plan that's locked away till 59 and a half that they think they're going to save tax. And here's imagine this. They say you can live off 70% of your pre-retirement income. Now, I don't know about you, but I never want to live on less than what I'm making now. I want to continue to have more because the luxury once enjoyed is a necessity 100%. You know, it becomes a new standard, and so it's coming from financial planning is somewhat communistic because it says the ends justify the means. You living a life of scarcity and lack and the grind, and you know investing in everyone's dreams but your own, because when you put money in the stock market before you funded your own skill set, well, you're saying I don't trust myself, I'm not good enough. Give it to the people that use really big words, and Wall Street, which why would we trust Wall Street with anything? Well, would you take your grandkids to Wall Street daycare? No, 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 no. Getting on Wall Street Airlines? No, me neither. But we somehow give the wolves of Wall Street our money because they scare us enough that we think that we're not capable. And when we lose financial confidence, we get into financial bondage because we say, I don't know. And we relegate it, not delegate it. We hand it over, cross our fingers, hope for the best, and miss out on the most precious moments of life, because if you follow that system and they say, when you're retired, now you can go live this great life, you will have shown all of your family members that work the top priority, not them. And now when you have the money to take them somewhere, you don't have the connection and they watched you, so they're working too hard to actually enjoy it. Wow, well, real talk right there, bro. It's interesting that you said that they lack the confidence, the financial confidence. But the reason they lack the financial confidence, or I think you said they lack the financial confidence is because they lack the financial competence. You didn't learn about how money works so you could learn how to work your money. Like most people have been taught to work hard for money and have not been taught how to have money work hard for them. The whole idea I'm a hard-working guy when I'm working hard and by hard I mean intentionally and intensely. Well, I'm working, I'm just not going to work all the time, I'm just not doing that. It's 12 noon, this is a long day for me, right? And I work sometimes on Wednesday. I'm not here, but my life is not consumed with work. My life is consumed with life. People ask, what do you do for a living? Can I ask you a better question than that? What do you do while you're living? That's way more important than what you do for a living. But maybe the reason you don't know what you do while you're living because you don't have a time to do anything while you're living because you're too busy doing what you do for a living. And often financial institutions and marketing are telling you the definition of wealth instead of you choosing what wealth is for yourself, 100%. And if they're choosing it, it will be a negative or scarce, or there was this commercial that Fidelity used to have where someone was walking and the Fidelity green line, and they see this collector car and the music like they love it, and then out comes the advisor. Stand on the green line. My first question is maybe they know how to buy collector's cars and sell them for more than what they bought it for. Exactly. Maybe they buy a collector's car and actually goes up in value instead of buying a car that goes down in value the second you take it off a lot because it's a bunch. It's like just something that nobody really cares about. Anyone could get at any time, and so they discount the investor DNA of the individual. MHM. I have a client that when I met him, he was reading a Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman books, and he's worth $100 million. And so he and his wife were like, I think we just need to cut back on our travel. And I was like, cool, let's talk more about that. And then they're like, we're really upset because they had $1 million in their 401k and it had been down 10% that year. And they're like, it's so frustrating. I'm like, so you lost, $100 of $100 million net worth. What percentage is that? And they calculate. I'm like, but how much time do you think about it? And it was like every day consuming their thoughts 'cause they're losing money. And I said, you own so much art that is world-renowned that you could sell for a ton of money. You are really good with structures in your business. And so he ended up cashing that out, investing in a coffee business that just got a $70 million valuation, which is a lot better than what the 401k did during that same time because it was who he was. And then I just had to say, stop being afraid, stop putting money into things that don't make sense to you. I personally, I'm in finance and I've been since June of 1998, but I have $0 in the stock market because I own a business. And if I have a vision for that business to change how finance is played to help people that are on the way up that would never get the sophisticated advice for the uber wealthy, and say I'm here to help you, not the people that are already getting the amazing help, then I have too big of a vision to waste the money on someone else. Like when I say someone else, I mean like Apple's not going, we're flushed with cash, let's put it in Microsoft.